One of the coolest sets of cousins we've got are the Hiram Binghams. They're related to us through Reverend John Lothrop and Hannah House. Of course, anyone who's related to us through Reverend John Lothrop is related to us twice, due to a little inbreeding between a great-grandson from his first marriage and a granddaughter from his second. The first cousin Hiram Bingham was a missionary. There were plenty of people he could have converted. So, whose soul did cousin Hiram Bingham decide most needed saving? How about anyone who lives here? Excellent choice, cousin Hiram Bingham. The only problem was, Hawaii is really far from New England. Especially back then, since there weren't any airplanes. Or Panama canals. Had to go the long way. Took him 163 days to get there. That's a 5.5-month commute. Cousin Hiram Bingham was pretty good at his job, though, since he converted the Queen to Christianity and built one of the first churches in Hawaii. He also helped get the Catholic missionaries banned from the islands. Way to take out the competition, cousin Hiram Bingham. He was also instrumental in getting prostitution and alcohol banned from Hawaii, which really angered the sailors and other foreigners who didn't appreciate the influence that cousin Hiram Bingham had in the islands. Maybe that's why in the book, the character based upon him is such a jerk. In the movie, which was the #1 film in 1966 and was nominated for 7 Oscars, he's the bad guy too. In real life, his wife, who in the movie was played by that Mary Poppins Sound of Music lady, wasn't in love with someone else, and when she got sick, he took her back home. Can't damage cousin Hiram Bingham's reputation too much, though, especially since he was cool enough to get a World War II Liberty ship named after him. The second cousin Hiram Bingham was a missionary, too. He continued the family tradition of proselytizing tropical island paradises. Coolest thing he did was create a written language for Kiribati. His daddy was one of the first guys to transcribe Hawaiian, and he translated a few books of the Bible, but Junior gets sole credit for Kiribati. And he translated the entire Bible. Good work, cousin Hiram Bingham II. His son, cousin Hiram Bingham III, was elected governor of Connecticut. But not long thereafter, one of the Connecticut senators died, so they had a special election to replace him. Cousin Hiram Bingham III won that election too, so he was both a governor-elect and senator-elect of Connecticut, served as governor for a day, retired, and headed to Washington, where he got into some trouble. Silly cousin Hiram Bingham III. But being an elected official wasn't really his passion. He liked adventuring, traveling around and discovering things and stealing ancient artifacts to take back to his university's museum. Kinda like... You see, the character of Indiana Jones was based on cousin Hiram Bingham III. He had a couple of cool expeditions around South America with National Geographic. Most significant thing he did was discover Machu Picchu. Obviously, the people living there knew about it, as did some of the missionaries who were busy trying to convert the locals. But cousin Hiram Bingham III, being the son and grandson of missionaries, knew that if he wanted to, he could get all the credit. So he did. He was also a professor at Yale, and a lieutenant colonel in the army. And he and his wife, whose granddaddy ran some kind of jewelry store in New York, also had a couple of successful kids. Their one son served nearly 20 years in Congress, which is pretty cool. But of course the Hiram Bingham son was way more awesome. He was a diplomat who had stints in Japan and China and Poland and England and Portugal and Argentina. Most interesting gig he had, though, was as vice consul at Marseille. Mediterranean beaches ain't quite the South Pacific, but cousin Hiram Bingham IV was there on business. At the time, France was under the control of Germany, but the United States was still neutral and didn't want to upset the Nazis' puppet Vichy government. Cousin Frank's orders were not to give visas to any Jews, but cousin Hiram Bingham IV wasn't exactly the best at following orders. Instead of 0, he gave out 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 or a few thousand. Despite being under strict orders not to do so, cousin Hiram Bingham IV helped thousands of people who were destined for concentration camps escape the Nazis. He hid people in his home, obtained forged identity papers, and worked with the French underground to smuggle folks out of the country. Eventually, our government found out, and he lost his job at the consulate. No one really made a big deal out of it, though, and it wasn't until after he died and his family found some old letters that they learned exactly what he had done in France. He was totally abusing the privileges of his position and doing lots of illegal stuff. But now that our government isn't trying to appease the Nazis, we call his corruption constructive dissent and applaud his courage.